Distance education is not something I had great experience with until recently. As a teacher, only the emergent remote instruction required due to the pandemic. And as a student, it was not until my recent trek in obtaining my master's degree through an online program that I'd experience with distance education. In my first course, EDP 612 Introduction to Research, I found I was more motivated than I had ever been as a student. But why? Was it due to the fact that I hadn't been a student for a decade, and that much had changed? Why was I suddenly finding more meaning in a class than ever before? I cannot necessarily vouch for anyone else in the course, but I was for sure finding more meaning and relevance. I found my group members were always motivated too, unlike those I found in my undergraduate courses a decade ago. Why was this? When studying the distance education theories in my distance education course, Malcolm Knowles' theory of andragogy stood out to me. This theory explained why I felt more motivated now than I had ever before. Malcolm Knowles' theory of andragogy pertains to adult learners. It wasn't a theory created just for distance education, but it quickly became a distance education theory due to the fact that most adult learners do so online. As detailed in Teaching and Learning at a Distance, Malcolm Knowles' theory of andragogy describes the adult learner as being more self-directed. Check. They value autonomy and planning. Check. They value autonomy and evaluation. Check. They have more life experiences to relate to. Big check. They respond better to internal motivation. I still respond to external motivators, but check. And finally, they understand the reasoning behind their learning. Check. This theory embodies a learner-centered approach that makes an adult learner feel dignified and respected. Adult learners expect life-centered content that allows them to use their experiences. Adult learners need to know the importance in something. Motivation has moved from learning to please a teacher to learning based on the importance of transferability in their lives. And adults tend to be more independent and motivated. Actually, the biggest difference I found between pedagogy and andragogy is the motivation due to life experiences and goal orientation. I found self-motivation to be an important factor in my Introduction to Research class. The members in this class were all adults with jobs, many of us with families, all with busy lives. Face-to-face instruction, especially in Morgantown, West Virginia, was out of the question. The online platform was easily accessible and necessary for us. Our teacher, Dr. Kell, emailed us videos and a list of required readings, which we could then view on our own time. This email also detailed the requirements for each week. Each week consisted of readings and hands-on component related to the overall goal of creating our research proposal. Learner autonomy was provided to us as we were able to choose our overarching research topic, and ultimately our group members at the very beginning of the course. Our overarching topic was on assessment, and my group relied heavily on our life experiences and completing all tasks as it related to the topic. Each week, we were required to conduct a synchronous Zoom meeting with our groups. Through these meetings, it was evident that all learners involved were motivated and understood the reasoning behind the research topics. Not once did anyone skip out on the meeting or try to slide by without doing the work, despite the fact that the teacher did not attend those meetings. Peer evaluations were incorporated, but honestly, I feel like they weren't even necessary because everyone did their part. In addition, asynchronous discussions were required weekly for whole class communication, and that allowed for all of the learners to show their experiences and relate them to their experiences so that we better understood the research proposals. According to Orman Simpson, motivation is the best predictor of retention. Synonymous with Knowles' assumption, studies show that adults are goal-oriented in choosing and completing courses. Research shows that adults choose courses that will help them get a new job related to their current one. In one study, conducted amongst 106 adult learners at the University of Ghana Distance Education, 49% of adult learners completed their coursework to obtain higher qualification. 47.8% completed the course for increasing their personal knowledge, and 44.8% did so to discover their abilities. The other potential motivators did not even score half as high. When questioning their satisfaction with course offerings, 69.5% expressed satisfaction with their course offerings, and interestingly, the other 29.5% expressed dissatisfaction only due to the fact that the courses did not pertain to their profession. And that statistic is interesting because it shows and mirrors Knowles' assumption that adult learners are goal-oriented and goal-motivated. Of these same distance education students, 84.9% were studying for the purpose of professional development. Adult learners thrive in courses related to their professions. It is clear that motivational differences play a large part in andragogy, and while Knowles does focus on the intrinsic motivators of adult learners, he does fail to acknowledge the potential extrinsic motivators. While a lot of these intrinsic factors related to professional development and jobs, some of the extrinsic motivators do as well, like obtaining pay increase or moving up in position. The extrinsic motivators were overlooked within the course as well. While life experiences were utilized in our research proposal, the reasoning for our attendance in the course was not. Difference in external motivators could affect a course's overall group participation, as there are different levels of motivation present. According to past research, there are strategies that do work in fostering motivation of adult learners. However, to acknowledge those means to acknowledge another flaw in the Andragogy theory, and that's that it doesn't really tackle the learning goals or the overall teaching of the course, and rather just the characteristics of the learner and potential design elements to consider. The design elements that Knowles proposes are creating an environment of openness and respect, learner involvement in planning, diagnosing needs and objectives, as well as providing learner activities based on experiences. Though this is as close as Knowles comes to describing teaching strategies, others have extended his research to include potential ones. And some of them are chunking the information to make it easier to assimilate with past experiences, still offering the why so that the transferability is there. Transferability is very important to adult learners. Providing many different types of documentation so that there are plenty of resources to look at and draw conclusions from. Adult learners like to work better in groups with each other. They'd prefer to ask each other for help as opposed to the instructor, and that way they can share past experiences. Adult learners like flexibility. They like for environments that allow for exploration and experiential learning. Sometimes the instructor may have to change the rules if it means that learner can push the envelope to try new things, and that allows for some differentiation in adult teaching. Making sure students are equipped with enough learning to complete required learning tasks are also important. You can't assume that an adult learner knows everything that they need to know. Classes should also be centered around content-related problems and not just strictly the content. And that helps the adult learners figure out the why behind it all. Classes should permit active participation and encourage related experiences, including opportunities for both student-student interaction and student-teacher interaction. Classes should be open for redesign, and additional activities can be added based on evaluation measures. Of these strategies, many were similar with the methods used in Introduction to Research, the greatest of which was the collaboration methods. We were required to complete all learning tasks in our assigned groups, and these same groups were used for the entirety of the course. By using groups, it allowed for multiple viewpoints and perspectives to be incorporated into the ongoing research project. In my group, focusing on assessment, 2 of us were science teachers, and then there was a strings teacher. Luckily, we all worked in the K-12 environment, and that allowed for us to find common ground in relating our experiences to develop our research proposal. Our research proposal was on student attitude changes, using formative assessment with summative assessment as opposed to just summative assessment. Luckily, we were able to all draw from our experiences and transfer this into the job that we are currently working. Dr. Kell revolved the class around the creation of the content-related research proposal, and that made the learning experience meaningful, relatable, and transferable. He could have easily used hypothetical situations and book-based questions, but instead he turned it into a flexible, hands-on learning experience that supported learner content incorporating experiences. Each week, he provided our group with meaningful feedback, and that helped us to shape our project for the final submission. Going back to the motivational differences of my group members, I found that we all had intrinsic motivation as described by Malcolm Knoll, though in varying degrees. One of the group members absolutely loves to learn for the sake of learning. One was hoping to learn more to use in her classroom, and I was a bit of both. There were some external motivators present, as I, along with my group members, were motivated by that final grade, even though they were still hugely intrinsically motivated, as well as I was. Knowles does a decent job of describing adult learners through his theory of andragogy. However, he doesn't do so well at describing the cultural and political characteristics. Distance education opens up the possibility to work with others from different cultures across the world. So it really needs modified to include those differences. Just using the pandemic as an example, each area handled the pandemic in a different way. And I know with education of teachers, that's a huge thing to incorporate. We all handled it differently, so we all have different experiences that need taken into consideration to better find a solution in the future. By understanding learner context, a course can purposely be made richer by providing opportunities for those differences to be melded into content understanding. When choosing the groups, we had limited understanding of the learner context. It would have been helpful had we known a little bit about each other before choosing groups. Luckily, my group worked out, as we were all in the K-12 environment, and we found a lot of relatable issues that we could compare and we could draw from. I'm not sure that that was the case for everyone, however. Another flaw in the theory of andragogy is the gap that exists between pedagogy and andragogy. Andragogy explains my finding more meaning in my graduate level courses in my 30s, but is not clearly defined as to when pedagogy ends and andragogy begins. This was not an observed problem in my research course, but I imagine it to be more difficult to make a distinction in an undergraduate course that does consist of young learners and older learners. Looking back, the theory of andragogy most closely resembles my experience in the Introduction to Research course. The course created a respectful, experience-based learning environment that did provide learner autonomy and collaboration-rich opportunities. This theory itself does have some flaws as it needs to be updated to reflect possible external motivators, cultural and political characteristics of the learner, acknowledge the bridge between pedagogy and andragogy, and to include those learner goals and strategies for the actual teaching portion. Though it does have its flaws, andragogy has proven its worth in consideration as a theory to acknowledge when designing a distance education course. As adults have different motivators brings forth retention, and retention brings forth a clear picture of curriculum, and a clear picture of curriculum brings forth the necessary changes in experts in a field.